Hello, and welcome to PSYWAR, a weekly podcast of the 8th Psychological Operations Group, Airborne, where we give people an inside look at the Psychological Operations Regiment. Welcome back. This week we are discussing PSYOP selection and the qualification course. I'm your host, Master Sergeant Mike Dean. With us today is Master Sergeant Dwayne Griffin from the PSYOP proponent at the U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, also known as SWCC. Welcome, Dwayne. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me, Master Sergeant Dean.
Yeah, we appreciate it. If you don't mind, just kind of give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my current position right now is at John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School with the PSYOP proponent. I'm the senior enlisted career manager. Coming into the Army, I originally came in, signed up in 1999, went into the field of air defense. I was what you would consider as a short-range air defense guy. I was stationed here at Fort Bragg. Went back to the schoolhouse in 2004. I was an AIT instructor then. And I just decided that, the Army really wasn't for me at the time. I wanted to venture and see where I wanted to go. I got out. I ETS'd. Went and worked contracting with General Dynamics. I was a field engineer, military liaison. I was kind of saying that we were doing the ground-based work for the mapping system, so working with ArcGIS and stuff like that with Fort Bliss. Okay. So I was the site lead there. And after a year and a half, I was like, I love the challenge of the Army. That esprit de corps, that camaraderie. I missed it, and I was like, I'm more of that team event kind of guy. I'm up for the challenge. I really like that competition piece. So I enlisted back in. Went back in as air defense. I really didn't want to go. I wanted to go Cav Scout, but at the time,
why would you want to do that?
Yeah, well, it's 2006, 2007, and the whole the ramp up with the war and stuff like that. And I was like, I really wanted to get back into it because I'd already deployed twice prior to that with 82nd. Okay. I went into Afghanistan in 2002 and then into Iraq in 2003 with those initial pushes. So I really wanted to get back into the fight, and my easiest way was just to go back into air defense, even though as much as I didn't want to do it. Then eventually one day I was walking by our laundry facility and I saw a little pamphlet on the washing machine, and it said, "Talk to your local SOAR recruiter." And I was like, oh, this might be something for me, because I was an E5 living in the barracks at 32 years old, 31 years old. I was like, I got to find something else, And I reached out to them, and they told me the process, submit your packet work, come over. Eventually, I got approved, got my orders, brought me back to Fort Bragg, and I've been here at Fort Bragg ever since. Filled numerous positions within PSYOP, multiple deployments. My short stint there with SWCC at the schoolhouse, learning the bases of 37 Fox Soldier, and then being assigned to my first unit and deploying within 4 to 5 months after coming out of schoolhouse. It was fresh air to me because I really strive for that piece. I like to be on the go, up to new challenges, new different experiences in life, in just general. And then after I did 3 deployments, went to Iraq, went to Afghanistan twice on that piece. Okay. I have to say the Afghanistan piece was a lot different than Iraq because we were still kind of that tactical focus within Iraq, right. that conflict. So going into Afghanistan piece, we're going more into a instructor trainer, the by with and through piece, building the partner forces, for which I thought that was great. That was kind of where I like my focus because I already had been an instructor. So it was really helpful for me to slot in and see what we had as a birth of joining forces with partner forces. After that deployment, I came back over. I was assigned to Camp McCall, back into SWCC again as a senior assessor at assessment selection. Okay. Spent my time there for about 3.5, 4 years. Then was reassigned back to Fort Bragg and done a couple more deployments after that. One to Mississippi, and then also deployed in support of a New Dawn, and then Operation Iraqi Freedom, that whole piece of the transition. Okay. Yeah.
You said Mr. C. What is that?
Mr. C is your Military Information Support Task Force Central.
Okay.
It's located down in Qatar.
Okay.
Now they've moved over to a base now. That I know that a lot of people knew it with the other location, but they've moved over, and they're in the conversation now of moving it back to stateside, because I think they're seeing, just because of the drawdown of the conflict, and that it's really not needed there because it's not quite as much as a tactical focus.
Sure.
Now we're going into that by with and through and partner assisted.
Okay. So you've seen a lot of stuff, done a lot of stuff, which is great. I'm glad you're able to come out because you can talk to some of the things that some of our viewers want.
I know I've only
know
done
about.
just a small piece of what PSYOP has to offer, though. I think that's the biggest driver.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it. And this is kind of, for me, you know, as we get a little long in the tooth, and retirement's on the other side. You know, it gets closer. It's like, well, what does civilian life look like? And you've already seen some of that, and so having that kind of perspective is neat to present to somebody who's thinking about getting out. Like, hey, if you're thinking about getting out, well, here's another option. Come over to PSYOP and get a little bit of a different taste of the Army.
Right. I like to think of it almost as stability and chaos, because it's a stable way of life, but at the same time, you're always moving. You're always thinking about something different, and it's that being able to adapt quickly to your surroundings and your situations.
Right, and no two deployments are going to be the same.
No, never, never.
I mean, you rattled off a few. I think you said 4 or 5 PSYOP deployments.
Right.
Same here. I've got multiple, and not a single one of them was the same. Similar environments. I've been to Afghanistan a few times. I've been to a few other places, Central South America. None of them were equal.
Right.
They all had their own unique challenges, unique problem sets. Your teams change up a little bit over time, so you got new people that, to bring new, fresh ideas.
Yeah. Fresh faces,
Yeah.
because a lot of times it's hard for me, like you were saying, long in the tooth, just being senior, I lose a little bit more of the grasp of what's going on down in the ground. So having that fresh face, that new look, that new idea is great. I like it. It keeps me young.
Young at heart.
Yeah, young at heart, yeah.
My wife reminds me every day that my hair is getting grayer and grayer. So you've got some good familiarity with selection. We've had a few people on that have talked about selection. You've got a unique perspective, having been there as an assessor. So for somebody who's going through the process, they've met all the prereqs, they've talked to their SWORD recruiter, they've packets in, they're classed for selection. What would somebody expect? Getting ready for, is there something that you would recommend that they should get ready for in terms of, preparing for selection, and what can they expect? They show up on day one and kind of, and I know we can only talk so much because there's a reason for that, but we want to make sure that they're getting truly assessed and they don't have the answers to the test. But can you talk us through some of that?
Oh, most definitely. Without giving the keys to the kingdom, I think the first thing is that you have to ask yourself, is this where I want to go? Is this where I want to continue my career? And if you are married, if you have your spouse, you need to ask them and say, hey, there's a chance for me to be deployed consistently. Are you willing to accept that challenge? Because like you said, even with your wife, I'm married also, and it's a challenge. I mean, whenever you find out, hey, I'm deploying on a short notice, you have two months to prep, and most of that time that is PMT. So you need to sit down and have that long conversation with your spouse, and have that conversation with yourself. Is this somewhere you want to go? But training up for assessment selection, since it's that world of unknown, because even while you're there at assessment selection, we want to keep you unknown of what's coming in the future. So the biggest piece is the physicality. I think if you're able to meet those the physical capabilities, it makes the intellectual piece just a little bit easier because you're not under that stressor.
Okay.
So you don't have that stressor of always having to catch your breath, always having to push harder because you're not meeting that physical aspect of it. I know currently SORB has been working with the Thor 3, and they've been developing a lot of the train ups and stuff like that for the physical piece of the assessment selection, and it's good. I would highly assist, talk to the SORB, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, they have. Last time I checked, I want to say it was maybe last week. They have 2 separate workout programs
Right.
on the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion's website. a more succinct one that's, I think, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and then a longer
Right.
8-9 week program that you can follow to help get ready for the physical components of selection.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, because like you're even looking at now, we're getting ready to go into our summer break, and that summer break is that there's really hard to do the training out at Camp McCall because you're in a heat Cat 5 environment the whole time, and being able to have that now, you have that berth of train up where you can go in to start training up for your class coming up in September. No, that's a really good point, and where you're at. Also, I would ask somebody to look at the spoken language. I think that's another piece, is like looking at how we do papers, how you write these college level.
Sounds like you're talking about communication.
Very much,
Which is
very much.
what we do, right?
And it kind of plays in ties to what's going into the training pathway also, is whenever you get into your foreign language, is actually knowing how a sentence structure is met.
Right.
Knowing English will actually help you learn a foreign language. But those are just small pieces. You don't really need to have that focus whenever you go to A&S. I think it's just going to be more of being able to, get past the demands of the physicality piece, and then getting into the intellectual, and being able to come out and not be trapped in your bots.
Yeah, I think a big piece of it is, and I saw, when I was an instructor at the Q course, the people that were more introverted had problems, with some of the gates in the course, and it was, trying to get them out of their shell. And it doesn't mean you have to be this extreme extrovert. It doesn't mean extroverts are going to be successful at any phase of selection or the Q course. But it helps to be able to get out of your comfort zone, be able to have a conversation with somebody, be able to, write in common form. Some people, they think, oh, I'm done with high school, or I finished my college degree.
Correct.
I don't have to write another paper. Not so much. Like this MOS, this career field is very focused on the communication aspect, because you can't have behavior change without some kind of a communication.
Correct. You have to be able to get that narrative across and have it where it's understood.
So aside from that physical piece, how would you recommend somebody to try and prepare for that intellectual piece?
And that's also another good question. And I have been working with SORB, and they actually have a couple of the online links. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure where they would drive you now, because it's always ever changing. But I know that working with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez here at Fort Bragg, is that there's a couple of YouTube videos out there that will just give you the baseline of this is the common spoken English, and this is how it's derived into that piece, and it goes into the same way as the written.
Okay, so you've actually got two perspectives now, having been an assessor, but now you're a proponent, and I know you guys still have a key role in selection. I want to talk two different things here. First thing is, I go through selection, I don't get selected. What does that mean?
Well, it really depends on what your outcome was, because there's multiple outcomes. So majority, if you're not selected, you will have an eligibility to return, and it really depends on where the assessors and in that panel that does that final decision see you on your return. So, because it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, and all it is being able to take that, because they're going to give you minimum feedback because of the keys to the kingdom. We
Right.
kind of don't want to give you the answers to the test. But they're going to give you some feedback to say, maybe you need to work on your leadership, or say maybe you need to work on your teamwork, and maybe you just didn't come together with this piece, or even to the point where you want to say go into the intellectual piece of it. So with that piece is, I always say stay in contact with your SORB recruiter, because if you do have that 6 month, 1 year, 2 year, they're going to be able to work with you, because we do have, there is cases where, say, like if you have a 2 year ETR and then you want to submit for a waiver to come back early, there is that capability.
ETR, what is that?
That's your estimated time of return.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Good.
Yeah, so if you have that estimated time of return of 2 years, just go back and talk to your recruiter. He'll tell you, okay, well, you're a year out, so it might be a possibility we could submit you for a waiver. Then he'll know the process of getting that paperwork back to a SWIC for the approval or disapproval. But I'd always say don't look at it as being an end all be all, because just because you're not selected today doesn't mean those aren't the qualities we're going to be looking at for tomorrow. Because there's just that, there's just that small window of qualities that we're looking at that's going to be able to fill that gap that we have in the operational force, or that we understand, that we know that we can train and develop and lead them into a base for a PSYOP soldier. So it doesn't mean that, say, like you get that non-select memo that you're not going to be good for the Army. Go back to your branch, serve them well. I mean, that's the biggest piece, is to drive forward and evolve with that. But yeah, there's always that chance of an ETR.
So then, and is that, all that said, is that whether you are and we kind of have three different demographics that fill our ranks. Now we have initial entry soldiers that come straight through, they go to selection. Then you have officers, active duty officers, and you have active duty junior enlisted. Is that all the same for all of those folks?
Assessment selection, yes.
Okay.
After assessment selection, everybody goes. They're all in their different wheelhouse, I would say. I would speak on the IET. I'm going to brush right through it because I think a lot of the people that would be listening are probably more in service, but they should be aware of what steps that they go through before they get to the training pathway. So for an initial entry trainee, I always say IET. Off the street recruit, they'll end up going to OSUT with the MP Corps. MP Corps will actually give you a lot more base work, say, where they can put you in high risk scenarios. With the MPs, they're always dealing, possibly with a domestic violence or even just with a speeding ticket. So they're always working with those communication skills. So we've found that's actually a really good OSUT for our IET soldiers to go to. After IET, they'll go down to airborne school. After airborne school, they'll come and sign into Fort Bragg and then sign into SWIC. And then from SWIC, they'll go into a preparation course. And that prep course lasts for 4 weeks. And at the end of it, they successfully complete it, then they'll go ahead and be slotted over for assessment selection. Okay. And that's kind of, where everybody meets together. For our in-service, all it is just going to talk to your SOAR recruiter, attend assessment selection. You get selected the same way as an officer. And the officer, they'll be in contact with what you would call our future readiness officer. And that's Captain Jong. She sits at the Human Resource Command in Fort Knox. So then after assessment selection, it really deems on what schools that you need. So say if you successfully was selected, but you're not airborne qualified, we need to get you to airborne school. And for in-service, for an enlisted service member, they're going to go TDY to airborne school, then go back to their unit.
Okay.
So they're not going to come directly to Fort Bragg, and that's just the way it works with the pay and all this other piece for the school. Also, if that in-service soldier needs BLC, they're going to be assigned to RSOF BLC. But what I've always said is, if you have a chance to go to BLC at your current unit, please do it, because it's just going to it's going to be able to get you into a class quicker for us, because now we have to move you here, PCSU here to Fort Bragg, and then assign you to RSOF BLC, and then get you into the training pathway.
Right. So that's the basic leader course. That's what we have to do for promotion to
Correct.
sergeant. If somebody already has it.
If they already have it, if service members already airborne qualified and basic leader course qualified, they'll just come straight to Fort Bragg. They'll sign in to 82nd, and then they'll be signed in to SWIC after that. So you'll go through a week of transition there.
Okay. So it's signed into the 82nd.
Correct. So you'll sign into 18th Airborne Corps. You'll go through their welcome center.
The normal post
welcome
process.
You get your CIF draw. Make sure you're up on your shots and get your assignment and stuff like that.
Typical post-in process.
Right.
And so then that's your IET. So you have your prep course. This is all after selection. Hey, I've been selected. Yay. IET folks, they come straight to Bragg, go through the prep course, go to selection. The in-service enlisted, they will attend selection, get selected. If they need those courses, they can do them. Well, let me go back. Airborne school, they do that TDY and return to their unit.
Right, and that'll all be handled. Mr. Beltray up at Human Resources Command, he'll slot them on the orders and be able to get them to airborne school and then back to their unit. And then cut them orders to PCS here.
And then they will be enrolled in RSOF BLC.
If needed.
But if they can do it beforehand or if they have it,
right,
then that's not a requirement. And so then they show up to SWIC. So let's talk about the officers.
So whenever you're talking to Captain Joan, the future readiness officer, after being selected, she will stay in contact with that service member if they were selected. Even if they're non-selected, she'll still talk. But she'll be able to build all the packets and all the orders and be able to get them here, because some officers have already had the captain's career course within their current CMF, so they don't need to go to RSOF, captain's career course. So if you don't have that piece, she'll work all the orders the same way, with going to airborne en route, and then theirs is a little bit different because they will not go TDY back to theirs is going to be a PCS. It's going to be TDY en route for your PCS to come to Fort Bragg.
Okay.
So theirs is a little bit different on that piece. But then you'll be assigned here, and you'll go through the RSOF Triple C course, the Captain's Career Course, and then that's 12 weeks long. And then after that piece, will get you into the training pathway.
Okay. So I'm an officer, selected. If I have it, I show up to SWIC and start the training pathway. If I don't have it, meaning airborne,
Yep.
and Captain's Career Course, then that will be done prior to report to SWIC.
Correct.
Got it.
So there's a lot of moving pieces there, and I have to hand it to Mr. Beltry and his team at Human Resources Command, because they take on a lot of responsibility, because it's just not us that they're working with. They have the other CMFs also.
Okay. Now, with all that said, if a soldier, there's always opportunity for a soldier to not do so well in a course. They don't pick up something, they don't grasp something, and we'll talk more about this in the actual PSYOP qualification course pathway. But if somebody doesn't pass airborne school, or they don't pass BLC or the Captain's Career Course, what happens then?
I haven't had an experience with the Basic Leader course, or even with the Captain's Career Course. Now, we have seen it with the airborne piece. So with airborne, if you don't pass airborne, I'm sorry, that is a prerequisite. We cannot waive that at any point. So that's just one of those hardships. It goes back to the needs of the Army, and that goes for the same for our initial entry trainees too. If they're not able to pass airborne school, we have a representative down at Fort Benning, and then he'll slot you back in, and then you'll go needs of the Army. So it's not guaranteed that the IET will go back to being an MP. It's going to end up being what is open at the time. Okay. Now with the service members that are in service and they fail airborne school, they'll just go back to their unit, because that's why we do the TDY and return. So they'll go back to their unit.
So then, does that mean that, I guess, how long is that selection good for? Let's say they go and they don't pass airborne school, they go back to their unit, and 6 months later they go to airborne school. Can they then come back?
You'll have to submit in for a packet on that piece. That would have to go through the training group and be able to get that waiver approved.
Okay. And does the SORB handle that as well? Or?
I would contact SORB, because SORB would have all of the contact information for myself, or even for the training groups where that waiver needs to be routed.
Okay. And then I guess, how long is that good for?
For that selection memo, it's good for 2 years, because we understand that maybe you do show up for assessment selection. You are selected, but at the time you're on orders to go to Korea. We cannot take you off of those orders to Korea. You have to go and fulfill that piece, because you've already been assigned for them. So we understand that. So you can come to ANS, go to Korea, come back in a year, and then we'll get you into the training pathway. And Mr. Beltray is really good working with that. He sees it as soon as it comes up. Just also with that piece, it really depends, because Germany is going to be a 3-year commitment. The way they look at it is that you need to do at least 75% of it. So a lot of times I would prefer somebody who is on orders to go to Germany is to go to Germany first, and then talk to SORB, and then come back for assessment selection. Okay. Just so it gives you that window.
So basically, and I think we said it twice now, if you don't get selected, or if you don't pass a gate, that doesn't mean it's the end.
It's not the end, yeah.
And a lot of times, I've talked with other guests, that never quit mentality. That's a big part of Army Special Operations. And so, don't let that small hurdle be the end-all, be-all. You have an opportunity, go try again. The school's still there, we're still here, we're still training. Come back.
I've always said is, look at yourself in the mirror, do that self-evaluation. Maybe there's a piece where the assessors didn't see it, but you see it, that you may want to step up and make yourself more presentable. Because you always look at it as being a job interview. You're coming to put yourself forward, and this is what I have to provide. So a lot of times, just go back and do that self-reflection. Say, where can I develop myself as a soldier, as a service member, so I can provide that to the fight.
Talked a lot about selection. We talked a lot about kind of the in-between selection and showing up to the PSYOP qualification course. You and I went through the qualification course around the same time. So I kind of want to talk through the evolution of the course and where we're at with it today, and then actually get into the pathway, the way it stands now. So what I remember, and I've seen two different versions, because what I went through and how it evolved when I was an instructor. So what I remember is it was kind of run like a regular AIT, advanced individual training anywhere else in the Army. You showed up, you had your instructors, you had your class time, you had field time, and then congratulations, you're a PSYOP soldier, go out and do great things. That's how I experienced it as a student. I'm assuming yours was
very similar.
Very similar to that.
Yeah, so like whenever I went through, you did language training first. So you went into the language training, and then you went into the actual qualification course, and at the time we still had the advanced leaders course was a part of that training pathway, where we don't have that now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's changed a lot. So it's evolved. It's for a good thing.
And when that I think that was the biggest shock for me, to see how it had changed. Because obviously I got to the Q course. I went through the Q course in 2007, and I went back as an instructor in 2014. So there was a 7-year gap. I mean, over 7 years, the course had dramatically changed. We had started to introduce RSOF specific topics like unconventional warfare. We started to teach. It was really the introductions of the interagency piece. We actually had blocks of instruction for that. So there was a lot of, while I had experience doing that stuff, there was a lot on my part, because when you're teaching by doctrine. You incorporate your experiences because it helps the students understand what it looks like real life. But for me, I had to actually go back and, okay, well, this is what doctrine says. This is what, and how does it relate to what I actually did on my various deployments.
And this is really the behind the scenes stuff that happens before it even gets to face value. I think that's the biggest piece.
Right. And so I left as an instructor in 2017. We're in 2020. It's been a 3-year gap. Everything that I've heard and been told is the course has continued to evolve, and I think it speaks to our evolution as Army Special Operations. Global threats evolve. We have to evolve to maintain pace and ability to defend the homeland. Is that true?
No,
at this point,
Schoolhouse is always evolving. Even when you speak of that pathway itself, and it's like we do a split in between. So your enlisted and your officer are going to go to 2 separate pieces at the beginning for your qualification portion of the training pathway, and that's just so we can get them more specific into their areas of focus, their areas of concern. So it makes sense there, but then we're able to bring them back together after that. Then that's where you start driving into that RSOF skill, and it's really a combined effort in between, say, 1st Special Forces Command and our psychological operation group, saying this is mission focused with this is where we're at, and this is where we're starting to see gaps, and being able to drive that POI into development at the schoolhouse, so we can minimize those gaps and be able to get into that training focus.
Okay, so that POI is Program of Instruction. That's what tells the course how it's supposed to.
Correct.
Day 1 is this. Day 100 and however many is the graduation.
And currently, right now, we're going through a revision. So even with any beginning of any type of period of instruction, you always have to go through the phases of getting it institutionalized and getting it into the training resource management piece of it. So you're going through these pieces of making sure that the POI teaches what you're teaching, because you might think about, you look at the world inside this little fishbowl and you develop all your instruction from that, but as soon as you put it into the ocean, it's a vast world. So just ensuring that what you're teaching at this piece is going to be those base layers to get you back over into the force and be able to fill that gap, or that piece where we have that void that we need to.
Okay. So with the pathway, you mentioned officers and enlisted kind of start different.
They'll start in the same course, and it's going to be your orientation course, and it kind of gives you the base. This is what you are to expect. The next half year or 8 months, of your training. This is what you have to expect. They in process, do a lot of your paperwork. We'll actually sit down and do a language survey at that time.
Okay.
So that'll end up driving what language you're assigned at the end.
Okay. Actually, that's a good point, and I'd like to touch on it now, if you don't mind. So, language survey. They've taken the DLAB, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery.
You have to have that taken before.
And so, they've taken that at some point before they've gone to selection, or they've reported to.
So currently, just because of the situation that we're living in now, it's the pandemic with the COVID-19, is that we understand the testing facilities at some of the outstations have not opened back up yet. So us as a proponent, we're waiving that and saying, okay, you can go to assessment selection, but once you are selected and you're coming to Fort Bragg, we need to get you to a testing facility. Currently, right now, I think most of the testing facilities are starting to open back up, and they're allowing that. I think there might be a couple of the outliners that haven't caught up. So we're still waiving it, and then even if push comes to shove, we'll get you here at the Fort Bragg and be able to get you to have your DLAB test done here.
Okay, so they're in that intro orientation, which I guess you call phase 1.
It's just the
Something
orientation.
Like they do that language.
The language survey. Then.
What does that entail? What does that mean for somebody that's just shown up?
It's really what the service member wants, I guess you could say, because we still need to look at it as in needs of the Army, where we're looking at our gaps with that language capability. But sometimes people have this experience, like maybe they had spent some time in Japan and they understand the Japanese language. So that's a good groundwork for them to say, maybe that's where we want to teach or have their assigned language, their clang. Mm-hmm. So you want to look at that piece, or if somebody's living in predominantly their household speaks French, that's a good candidate maybe to push them into the French. And it really all depends on what the operational force has as a gap. Do we have those positions to fill in that coded language? So what ends up happening is proponent will reach out to the operating force, and that'll be with the 4th Psychological Operations Group and 8th Group, and then we'll bring in 1st Special Forces Command, and they'll chair a board, and the proponent will head it, but we just kind of, I would say bring everybody together to say, this is who we have in the schoolhouse. Mm-hmm. This is the possibilities of what we're looking at for the coded positions that need to get filled, where your operational needs at. Okay. So it brings it all together and be able to assign those language. So for somebody who possibly does speak to in French, maybe we don't have that position for you, and we see that we need to place you into another language. Okay. So it's kind of how that board operates.
The service member, do they get, when you do that survey, are they familiar with what the gaps are in the force, or is that something that happens after the fact?
No, that's more of what the leaders are looking at.
Okay.
It's kind of goes unnoticed by the service member.
So then, if somebody's got a qualifying score, do they still attend language training through the pathway, or is that something that they get to skip?
Possibly they could skip, and that's only if the operational force has that need to fill that position.
Okay. I would assume, just like many other things, it's not always a guarantee.
No, it's not.
Could they find themselves sitting through their language that they're qualified in to get, I guess, better at that language?
Well, and that's also if they don't meet those requirements. So if you're not meeting that 1+1+ inside that control language, then you're going to need to go back through the course and be refreshed.
Okay. And so I'm kind of jumping, I think, ahead a little bit, but where does language fall in the pathway now?
The very end.
The very end. Okay. So when will a service member find out what language that they're going to be attending?
After the orientation, and then the board will convene,
Okay.
and then as soon as those results come out, you'll see it be brought into their ATARs, into their training record. So then they'll be slotted for the class, and they'll be notified via their AKO email.
Okay. So kind of going back a little bit then. So we've talked orientation, we've got language at the end. They're going to find out what their language code is, shortly after their survey. Now they start the next step in the course. And what does that look like?
All that is just going to be your qualification course. This is going to be the groundwork of your 37 FOTs. So then that will be broken into your two areas, like I was speaking on before, where your officers are going to go to one specific course, and then your enlisted will go to another specific course.
Okay.
And that roughly lasts for about 10 weeks.
Okay. And so they get their kind of core PSYOP tasks through that, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And then they finish that. Then what? What comes next?
Then you would continue on into your RSOF skills.
Okay, so some of the stuff we were talking about,
correct.
The unconventional warfare, the more soft, peculiar,
correct.
different tasks. Okay, and so that's orientation, course, PSYOP, soft skills. What comes behind that?
And then that's where you go into your language.
Okay. We talked about it a little bit, and I said, as a part of that soft skills, is that the interagency piece as well?
Correct.
Okay. So you get to see the unconventional warfare aspect, some of the tactical pieces, but then you get to see the more strategic, global interagency piece as well. And for a lot of people, I get this question a lot. Two questions: which one do you like better? And what's the difference? Matter of fact, I was talking to a soldier a couple of days ago, and he was under the impression that there was two separate pathways in the qualification course, and I had to explain to him, no, it's all the same. You just get familiar with those environments because we work across the spectrum of operations. For me, I don't have a favorite per se. I've had good engagements on both types of deployments, so. I don't know, for your experiences.
I've been kind of singly focused. I've been tactical the whole time, except for that one Mississippi rotation. So most of mine have all been tactically focused.
Okay. Anyone that specifically is your favorite?
I really enjoy them all. I mean, I think it's because they all give you that different look. There's always something different that we go after, or just the focus of the mission itself. I've enjoyed my time in the Army. I've always said that.
No, yeah, it's a challenging place to be. It's a unique environment, but I found it rather rewarding, especially being here in RSOF. Like I've always said this. People have heard me say it. I started where I started in the infantry, loved it, would do it again, but I would come back here again as well, just because the challenges that the MOS presents. And just the opportunities as well. So this is another big question I get as you're going through the course, and you've got kind of three different rank demographics that show up to the course. You have your junior enlisted, your E1s, privates through E4s, specialist corporals, maybe some E5 sergeants, and generally lieutenants, maybe captains, your first lieutenants. Or is it a thing for promotions in the course?
Currently, yes. And it's only at the end of the course, after you're assigned as a 37 FOTS. That's where all the promotions are going to happen. So say if you're a PFC, as you complete your distance learning, you go to basic leaders course, and those are the small little pieces that you have to do in your education before you can go through with the promotion. That's falling into your step process. So with those PFCs, yes, they need to make specialists at the beginning of the qualification, the training pathway. And then upon graduation, that's whenever you are promoted to E5 or sergeant.
Okay, so speaking on the enlisted side then, let's say we have the initial entry, your IET soldier, is that the same case when they finish the pathway? Are they going to be promoted to sergeant at the end of that?
No, but they will be qualified. Okay. So they will be promotable at that time. So they'll come out and they'll go to the operational forces, the E4 promotable, and then they will be promoted as soon as they hit that time and grade, time in service.
Because I know that's a challenge. I know we've started to see more of those guys hit our ranks, and it's definitely a question that comes up often. Like, what does that mean? You know, and I've had a few of my peers. Hey, we've got this specialist that's just showed up. Why is he not a sergeant? Well, there's Army rules that govern promotions, so.
And we're always trying to work it to make sure that piece is done correctly.
But once they are eligible, they will promote.
Right, correct.
Even though they've already hit the ranks. And then so for our officers, how does that play through the Q course?
Well, there'll be whenever they come out of the course, there'll be a captain.
Okay, so if they're not already a captain, they'll be a captain by the time they graduate. Okay, perfect.
A lot of times, by the time they are assigned to the schoolhouse, they are captains. So,
no, that was my experience. I personally didn't see any captain or lieutenants when I was an instructor. So it was weird when I started meeting people that were showing up to SWIC to in process, and you get this first lieutenant. I'm like, what are you here for? Like, are you the new S1?
Yeah.
Why are you? Oh no, I'm here for the Q course. Oh, captain's career course.
Right.
And it seems like they promote pretty either right before the actual course
the
pathway.
training pathway, right.
So that's good for them to know once they complete the course. You mentioned it earlier. It's kind of the big thing that's going on right now is COVID-19. From your window, like, how has that affected the course pathway, aside from what you mentioned, like as far as like DLab testing? Is there anything else that's has it stopped training? Has it delayed training? Has it have they had to change focus? If things had to be changed in the course, like, what does that look like with the current impact? So
there has been some cancellations prior to, and that was predominantly our assessment selection course. So we did cancel 2 of those courses, and that was just deeming because you're going to be within that proximity. Where a lot of our other courses, we can actually do it, say, in a virtual state or in a distance learning piece. And I know, like with the NCO Academy, we've been working with them and going through the different platforms to be able to run that course. And a lot of theirs is going into that virtual realm where we're using the Microsoft Teams or going in and using that direct conferencing service and application. So we've been using it, and it's been very effective. I haven't heard really a negative piece on it, except for possibly that whenever you put way too many people into one conferencing system, it has a tendency to lag a lot. But they're still running the courses. So
just general system limitations, but really no change.
No. All it is just finding different means of being able to instruct the course, because it's gotten to a point where you can go out into the field and train. So now you're in that environment where you can keep that separation in between, and continually always monitoring. I know with the Special Warfare Medical Group, they're always adhering to the checks, doing the temperature checks, making sure that nothing has changed within the parameters of that service member.
No, that's good. You mentioned the field, and I'm curious because I know what I experienced as a student. I know what I experienced as an instructor. So you're going through the pathway. Should a student expect to experience life outside of a classroom environment?
Most definitely. I would go ahead, whenever you get into the training pathway, it's going to be early mornings, late nights. It's just something to expect because we are in that training environment, and then you will be going to the field. For the field approximation, or saying how long they're going to be in the field, I'm not sure, because that's always evolving and changing, and that's more of a 5th Battalion Special Warfare training.
Okay. So I'm glad you brought up 5th Battalion. So 5th Battalion, 1st Special Warfare Training Group, is known as the PSYOP Training Battalion. What is kind of their wheelhouse in all of this stuff that we've just talked about?
Well, they train the soldiers. They're the behind the scenes, and also the ones that are there as the instructors training the soldiers as they come into the pipeline.
Okay. And where do those guys come from?
From the operational group.
Of course, right? Yep. No, I can speak to that. It's I've had people actually ask, like, where, is that a 37? Yes, they're 37s. We send all of our soldiers over there. They come from the operational force. They have a variety of experience, and that's the really fun part When I was an instructor, having the different experiences from tactical to the regional side, working at the State Department, working different combatant commands. And we had people that had worked in AFRICOM, down in Africa, Germany, UCOM, the PACOM, Philippines. Myself, I was a Southern Command guy, so I'd had experience down there. So we had this just vast variety of experience. And then, of course, the tactical stuff with, Afghanistan, Iraq. And so it was a lot of fun to be able to kind of share our experiences and then be able to explain and articulate to the students, hey, this is PSYOP. Not every day is the same.
Correct, yeah. Expanding that knowledge base.
Yeah. And so, and if, some of my former students could probably attest, I used to do story time. Like, hey, we're going to talk, and this is how it really is. This is what doctrine tells you, and you follow that as your guidelines, but this is what it's going to look like on an actual operational, mission set. So we're in the course, and I can attest to this. It's not difficult. Like you said, early mornings, late evenings, field time. It is a challenging course.
Most definitely.
We talked a little about preparing for selection. Is there a way that you think a soldier could prepare for the Q course and not just the physical? The physical stuff, I think you should maintain. You continue to do that. But from the intellectual piece, is there something that you think a soldier could do to prepare?
I think just to continue on with the same preparation that you're using for assessment selection, I would increase it. Going in and looking at the spoken language, learning how the adverb works or the verb or congregation and working your subject and your verb agreement and going into just the basis of how the English language is spoken and written, because it's going to put you just leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else as you go into your conversational piece, your high stress situations, and going into your language training.
No. One of the things that I remember specifically, when you talk about conversation and communication, that was one of the toughest gates that we had as an instructor. We spent a lot of time prepping the students, for that. Really, it's face-to-face engagement. I'm assuming it's still a big piece because that's what 9th Battalion's motto is the last 3 feet.
Correct.
Talking face to face with somebody, being able to have that spoken conversation to influence, a specified audience, and so, that communication, building upon that is very important. The other thing that I noticed is study habits, because you're in a course. It's a long course. You're going to get a lot of information. At times it's going to be stuff you've never heard of. And so I always would tell my guys, you have to have good study habits. It's no different than taking a class, at a college. If you're working on a degree, great. Those same study habits matter in this course because it's not going to stop.
No, it really does. I think it drives into that whole time management piece.
Yeah.
I kind of, from my perspective of it, and it's just me as Dwayne, is that if you're able to take this time in your life to say, instead of just, you got your PT out time frame that you do down at your regular unit, but taking that additional time after that to better yourself, that to me, that shows that you do have those time management skills to be able to adjust your time to be able to execute.
Right. And this kind of brings me to my next point. We have course failures. That happens.
No, it happens.
For me, the biggest thing that I saw was failure to manage time. So those study habits were not there, because what you'll find is if you don't pass a gate, you're now still receiving new information and then expected to perform because you do get a retest. I don't know what the policy is now, but I know you get a couple chances, to pass gates before you get either recycled or dropped from a course. And so just the study habits become extremely important.
Yeah, it does. Time management is the key.
So we've talked through the course. Students sometimes they have difficulty. Sometimes the student may fail a gate or fail the course entirely. Do you have any visibility on that? And if so, like, what does that look like? What does that mean for a student that's failed a gate or a part of the course?
So anything that's dealing with the academic piece is going to be handled by 5th Battalion. It's going to be done by a case-by-case basis, and 5th Battalion First Special Warfare Training Group is going to handle all of that piece with administrative drops. Now, if it goes into a point where it's morally unethical, it's most definitely going to come across my desk and then go to the commandant, and that'd be General Roberson.
Okay, so in-course stuff handled locally with the battalion and the training group. Anything beyond that, extreme measures, case by case, comes up higher.
Correct, and also with that piece, that even with 5th Battalion, that there could be a 2-year estimated time of return, and at that time you can place back in for another waiver through the SWORD recruiter.
Right. I remember, and it may have changed since my last time there. Definitely need to get some new perspectives. So I need to get some 5th Battalion representation on the show here, so we can get into some of the nuggets. But I remember students had a few opportunities through the gates to pass. So I'm assuming there's something similar, but definitely need to get those guys.
Most definitely.
So kind of moving on, we've talked evolution of the course. Looking at how we are now in today's environment, what do you see the schoolhouse staying the way it is? Like, what do you think looking forward? With what you've experienced from the regiment, but also as the position you sit now. What's the future of the schoolhouse?
I think it's funny just because of the fact of what we started off with, of our experience in 2007, 2008, going through the schoolhouse as, E5 Snuffy, right, or Sergeant Snuffy, and now how that training pathway has evolved and changed, and just that environment of where we are focused at. And 5 years from now, I'm going to see it evolving again. It's always going to be evolving.
Okay, and it's just a testament to the special operations environment trying to maintain pace with near peer threats.
Correct.
Looking at it from the information standpoint, and it's really a great thing that's come out of late. A couple weeks ago, General Clark, the SOCOM commander, talked about 3 fronts of warfare, with modern warfare, specifically special operations. One of those fronts being information. Like, where do you see us and the schoolhouse and how that direction is going? Like, what do you think that means for us as PSYOP?
No, that's a good question, and we're all, like we said before, we're always evolving. A lot of times the platform changes, and that's just how we get that message across. But a lot of times the fundamentals of developing that message is going to stay the same. So really the platform of it does change, and we're always evolving and looking at that piece and seeing how we're able to get that message across, so we can have that influence over that battle space.
So one of the things that I've told my soldiers, you get into leadership positions and you get these questions: how can I improve? How can I get to where you're at? With what you just said, we have to evolve. We have to stay abreast. And so I've always told my soldiers, the academic piece of this career field doesn't stop just because you graduated the Q course. You're going to spend a year or two, and you're going to get a couple courses that are relevant then. You're going to do a couple deployments. Fast forward, and I'm a prime example. I experienced it. My most recent deployment was about a year ago, and there was stuff that I had to learn that was new to me that I didn't experience or even care to know 10 years ago. And so again, it's that testament of we continue to adapt and evolve so that way we can be successful wherever the mission takes us. And that academic piece holds true. We're, to be cliche, a student for life, in my opinion. So student has done everything. They're doing great. Congratulations. You are about to graduate the PSYOP qualification course and become a 37 Fox or a 37 Alpha and join the PSYOP regiment. Student graduates. What happens? What's next for them?
So you'll out-process SWIC, and that's just where we ensure that you're meeting that SRR, that service retainability requirement, and that's going to be of 36 months. After that piece, that's whenever we'll cut your orders to send you over to First Special Forces Command, and then First Special Forces Command will send you down to your respective group, wherever your language coding is.
Okay, and that's all based off of current manning needs,
Correct.
so on and so forth.
And also going into your language of assignment.
Okay.
I know a lot of the focus now is ensuring that you're going to that region where your language is that capability.
No, it's nice. I know it's different. Again, back in my day, it was wonderful stories. Everybody went straight to 9th Battalion out of the Q course, and you usually spent about 2 or 3 years there before you went to what we call our regional battalions. And I know it's a lot different today than it was back then.
No, I totally agree. I've been assigned into French positions and all these others, but knowing my control language has always been Persian Farsi.
Wow. Well, hopefully, maybe you actually get to go speak French one day.
I should have to go back to the schoolhouse and get retrained or
why not?
Trained on that. Yeah.
Do it. Why not? Okay. Well, we're gonna wind down here. But before we go, just from your perspective, for our audience, is there anything that you want to add, that you want to share, tips, hints, just personal advice for anybody who's interested in PSYOP, thinking about PSYOP, waiting to start the Q course, anything like that?
First thing I would say is just do the research. It's just as simple as putting it into Google. Start pulling it up, asking the questions. You have this form here that you're presenting, with your podcast. Put it down in the question block. Reach out to yourself, reach out to the SORB recruiter. Look in the mirror, say, is this the direction I want to go? Ask your spouse. Do what all you can, gather all the information you can to weigh out those pros and cons and see if that's the direction that you want to take your decisions. Do you want to continue the journey? Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you coming out today. Yeah, thank you for having me. Oh, anytime. You're welcome back anytime. Tell your friends, check it out. If you got anybody that's looking for information on PSYOP, they can come to us any point in time. We're here to help them out. Most definitely. Thanks for joining us for today's broadcast. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.